How to manage the bucket strategy. My man Fritz up in Blue Ridge, who I'm a big fan of Fritz, with the Retirement Manifesto, had written this, one of his most popular articles in 2020, which is based on the most popular article he ever written, which is how to build a retirement paycheck. So we're going to dive into this a little bit, and then we're going to dive into a little bit more as well. I get this question a lot, actually, myself. It's interesting that Fritz said the same thing. So now we're in 2022. I imagine Fritz is still getting a lot of questions along this line. So let's dive into this. Again, Fritz Gilbert over at the Retirement Manifesto, he had written a book here, Keys to a Successful Retirement, and I'll put a link in the show notes, and you should buy it. It's a great book. He even signed it for me. Here's to a great, I can't read his writing, great something. Anyway, whatever. Oh, Fritz. Anyway, and if you buy it through my link, I get that sweet, sweet Amazon commission of 2%. So if you buy 100 of these books at, we'll just say $20 a pop, or I guess $12.99 a pop, I get, I don't know how much that is, 100 times $12.99 times 0.2%. Woo! All right, so let's dive into this a little bit. All right, so we're going to kind of hit it. You can strut down here, right here. Here's the guy's email. This is from Neil. All right, Neil. Vince Neil. Vince Neil is wondering how to manage his Motley Crue money. I discovered your blog this year, and I read it from post 1 to post present. So here's my specific question. Assume that for this case I have $1 million, all right? I have $40,000 in expenses. Invested 60-40. The allocation is not that important. If I was to implement the bucket strategy, $600,000 in equities, $320,000 in bonds, and $80,000 in cash. All right, so basically 60-40 portfolio, and I think Fritz goes into a little bit of detail what he will down here actually. So 60,000, 60% in stocks, 40% in bonds and cash is what he's saying. But year one, I would draw $40,000 to live on. He's drawn it from the cash. You can see his cash went from 80 to 40. But his stocks went from 600 to 300,000 because the market was down, what do you say, 50%. Now it didn't drop 50% in 2008. The S&P 500 was down 37%. Now it did drop 57% from October of 2007 to March of 2009, but there was no 50% drop in the market. In fact, let's take a look. Has there ever been a 50% drop in the market? Let's see. Dan Colbert's software from 55e.co, 55e.co. This goes back to 1871 for the S&P 500. I think it was like the S&P 10 back then or something like that. There just wasn't that many stocks, but let's just see. So we'll go to right here. 1907, not 50%. By 1918, 17, no, not 50%. 44% right there. All right, so 1931 was the worst year we've ever had. 44%, falling at 22%, falling at 9%. I just want to give you an idea. This is the trends and momentum thing. All right, so it fell again. And people are like, oh my goodness, it fell even worse. So there's a lot to be said about trends and momentum. This is why I'm going to go into one thing I'm not a big fan of that Fritz talks about here. Then in 1937, there's a 32%. All right, so 44 is the worst. In 2008 was the second worst. Nothing has come close since then. All right, so we have 1, 2, 3 years historically where the S&P 500 was down 30% right there. No, that's 74 is down 26 right there. We've had 3 years, my friends, going back to 1871. Should you bank on that? No, but there's never been a 50% decline, not even close. We've only had 3 years going back to 1871 where it's declined more than 30%. Could it? Sure, absolutely. As I always say, look at Japan. All right, so let's keep going here. Where's the article? But I get it. He's saying worst case scenario. Oh, all right, but that would be literally a first of its kind event to ever happen again. If that's what's keeping you from quitting your crappy old job, we know your crappy old job is killing you, and we know that the likelihood of a 50% drop in the S&P 500 in 1 year is not very likely at all. So we got simple facts. Your job is killing you. If it's a crappy old job, it might not be. Versus essentially, the likelihood of the S&P falling by 50% in 1 year has never happened. Can't say it won't, but just never has. Actually, let's just look at Japan too, shall we? Hold on a second. There's Nikkei. We're going to start in 1990, right here. 38, 26, 27, 23. That's 50 in 2 years. Look at that. 2001 and 2 just destroyed. Great. 42%. Yeah, nothing, man. We have had no 50% declines in any basic regular stock market ever. Japan, UK, S&P 500. So that's good to know. So just breathe a little bit easier. Right. Let's just go back to him. So now he started with $1 million, but now after first year he's down to 676. In fact, his bonds are worth more than his stocks at this point. He's got 40,000 in cash. All right. So in that scenario, what do you do? Do you rebalance year end? If you do, you'll supposedly capture the gains on the way back, but now you have less than 7 years in safe assets. If the market goes up in 2009, do you rebalance again? Just wondering how you see yourself implementing the bucket strategy. So what we're going to do, here's Fritz's thing right here. He's got 1 to 3 years in cash, 5 to 8 years, missed one, it should be, I'm not sure, I think he meant 4 to 8 years of income and stability, and 10 years in long term. So you can see that. I mean, it's pretty common sense there. In this case, the guy had 2 years of cash, and then he had 320 in bonds divided by 40. 320 divided by 40 was that 8? Yeah, 8. So he's got 2 years cash and 8 years in bonds, and the rest in stocks. That looks pretty good to me, man. I got no qualm with that. It's going back to my Wellington and cash portfolio. Got no qualm at all. All right. So what does Fritz say? Fritz, he talks about refill the paycheck. I completely agree with this. He says to simplify the calculation of a spending, I found it easiest to refill his savings account at the beginning of the year and then avoid making any additional move during the account year. I view it as a bit as a measuring cup approach, where the savings account is used as a protected subset of bucket one. So what he's saying, Fritz, is he's saying, and my man Fritz, I'll text him that I did this video, and if he wants to comment, he's saying move some of this right here into cash. I completely agree. 100% agree with that. 100% agree with that. Move some of your bonds, if you're doing the 3-bucket portfolio, into cash. Now, if you're like me, you just got cash in Wellington, I wouldn't. I just leave it well enough alone. But, be it as it may, that's what Fritz is saying. Move your bonds into the safe bucket, the completely safe bucket of cash. I agree. So now let's talk about right here. To manage the inevitable slop of moving money around, I use our Vanguard money market account to capture any asset sales during the year. As a general rule, I target 18 months of spending in the money market account. All right, so let's keep refilling bucket one. The main purpose of the bucket strategy is to avoid selling stocks during a bear market. Since bear markets frequently start with an aggressive move, a downward move, and I don't know that to be true. In fact, if we look at, and this isn't a bash Fritz, I just disagree. If you look at, we already talked about 19, 29, 30, 31, and 32. Same thing with 2000, 2001, and 2. All right, so what happened in 2000, S&P 500 was down 9. What happened in 2001, it was down 12. And what happened in 2002, it was down 22%. So we didn't start with an aggressive downward move in the beginning of the Great Depression, nor in the Great Recession of 2001 and 2. In fact, if we look back at Japan, I didn't notice that happened in Japan either. Let's look at the Nikkei going back to 1990. If memory serves, the 1990 bear market in Japan, it was pretty. Oh, look at that. Yeah, it got smoked that year. I thought it was down 9. Okay, so I was wrong there. But I don't. So if it's typical, because look, he still got 221. Yeah, that's pretty bad. Yeah, I don't know if there's any, if you can hang your hat on that. But be it as it may, I get what he's saying. Since bear markets frequently start with an aggressive downward move, it's important to keep our bucket one as close to full as possible. I don't care about any aggressive move downward. I care about having that money there, liquid, so you can spend it. That's just a fact, so you don't spend stocks. Literally that simple. All right, I don't have a set schedule refill bucket one, but I found I typically execute a refill trade 2 to 3 times a year. I mean, he can do. I get it, man. Fritz is a pretty engaging guy in this stuff, and he enjoys it. Oh, it makes my head look. It just hurts me to think about refilling the bucket 2 to 3 times a year. I was talking to a guy just today or yesterday. He's like, when should I pull the trigger and just reinvest in Wellington? Invest in Wellington. He's got all this money. He's now in cash going over to Wellington. I said, just do it and be done with it, man. But you got to go with your gut. I can't tell you what to do. I said, for me, I just do it and I'm walking. I don't want to think about this stuff. I don't like to fish, but I want to go fishing. I want to be out in the garden. I just don't want to think about this. Now, Fritz does all this too, and it's not saying because he's thinking about this, he's not doing his woodworking. But for me, I'm like, dude, the less I think about investments, the better off I am. All right. So here's what he says: rebalance your portfolio. And he cites this article from Kitsis. we're going to dive into this a little bit. I think this is a little bit misleading here. Not my man Fritz. Kitsis, not saying Kitsis is misleading. I just think this leaves a lot to be desired. So basically, Kitsis says, Michael Kitsis, if you wealth over time with rebalancing, all right, so you can see we start with $1 million in 1966, and by the time 1994 is around, we have it looks like $1 million, all right? So we broke even because we rebalanced. And then we got treasury bills, bonds, and equities. I have no idea what the percentage is. It looks like 60-40, kind of what Fritz was talking about. If you didn't rebalance in 1966 to 1994, you ran out of money in basically 1995. All right, and that is good for that time frame. That looks good for that time frame, but this right here does not prove that rebalancing works. So let's dive into my man's bucket strategy here. So we're going to go back to we're going back to Daniel's Coolbert's 55e.co bucket strategy. So we're going to start in 2000, all right, and we're going to start with $5,000 of income needs, inflation adjusted, and we need 100,000. We have 100,000. We're going to put 5,000 is what we got to pull out each and every year, inflation adjusted. We're going to use 10-year Treasury bills, 10-year Treasury bonds, for the bond proxy. We're going to use the S&P 500 for the stock proxy. This is a pure 60-40. There's no cash. We could make a 3 bucket. I just didn't feel like doing it. I just want to show you how rebalancing doesn't work necessarily in a different time frame than what Kitsis was talking about here. And again, this isn't the bash Kitsis. I'm just saying, don't say rebalancing is proof. A lot of people say this. Rebalancing is the only guarantee of a free lunch that we have. Bernstein, I think, William Bernstein said that. I was like, dude, no, it's not. It's not a free lunch if it doesn't work. And so let me just show you something here. So wealth over time with rebalancing in 1966 and 1994. It worked like a charm. All right, but if we go to the bucket strategy, all right, so right here, we're going to compare 2 things. We're taking, what we do here is we pull money from the safe account. The safe account is the 10-year Treasury when the markets are down. All right, so we're pulling 5,000 the first, well, it's 51.68 the first year adjusted with inflation, because inflation was 3.4. It's 53.15, 53.99. So the first year we start 40,000 in bonds / cash, however you want to do it, bonds and cash. It doesn't matter. And we have 60,000 in stocks. Well, the markets got hammered, so we're down 9% in 2000, so we're sitting on 54. We're down 12% in 2001, so we're sitting on 48. We're down 22% in 2002, so we're sitting on 37. All right, that's it, man. We're sitting on 37,000. We don't want to be pulling money from that portfolio when it's down that much. So instead, we took it from the bonds. We started with 40,000 bucks. We made a little bit of money, so we took 5,000 out, and then we're end at 37,000. We started with 37,000. We made that kind of return. We took a little bit of money. We sitting on 34,000. The same thing. So at the end of 2002, we're 30,000 in bonds and 37,000 in cash and stocks. Not unlike what Vince Neal had written about right here, where he says, what do you say? That he has 300,000 equities, 336 in bonds. If we look at the bucket here, we're sitting on 30,000 in bonds and 37,000 equities. So pretty much the same thing, same concept. All right. So what happened though? Well, we're not rebalancing here. We still need money. So we're taking from whatever is up. So in this case, the stocks are up. 2008, the stocks are down. So we take it from bonds. You can see, but the problem is we ran out of money right here. And in stocks, we ran out of money in 2013. All right, now bonds, we ran out of money in 2019. So this right here did not last 19 years. All right, so that sucks. And then the question would be, would rebalancing have solved that? If you rebalance, would have solved that dilemma? And we're going to show you here in Portfolio Visualizer, same thing, $100,000 starting in 2000. We're doing VFITX, and we're doing that's the Vanguard Intermediate Treasury Fund, similar to the 10-year Treasury, essentially. And then we're going to do the S&P 500, 40% in the bonds, 60% in cash, and the stocks. We're going to rebalance annually. Now, in this case, we're just pulling from the portfolio. We're not pulling specific from stocks or bonds. I can't tell if Portfolio Visualizer allows us to do that. But we're taking 5% a year, adjusting for inflation. And what you're going to find is, even though we rebalanced, we're still only sitting on $52,000 at the end of 2020. All right, so we're still in a world of hurt, man. Now, I mean, there's no way around. This won't last. This will not last until 30 years are up. All right, it just won't. And that's with the rebalance. If you don't rebalance, it's just not that big of a deal. No rebalancing. I'm just going to show you here. is, what do you say, 54,000, and now it's 38,000. So there's $16,000 difference. I mean, it's almost 50% increase at the end of 2020 from rebalancing versus not. I'm not saying don't do it, but I take a huge issue with that rebalancing. Both are going to run out of money within probably 5 years. But I take a huge issue with this right here. Rebalancing will assure you success. And I'm not saying Kitces is saying that. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying this right here is a little bit misleading because people say, oh, rebalancing will solve the dilemma. No, it won't. In both scenarios, rebalancing or not, you're running out of money in this regard. They're both. There's no two ways around that, 5%. So we didn't run out of money as quickly as we did here with the taking it from whatever is down, taking it from the opposite. So again, if stocks are down, we take it from bonds. If stocks are up, we take it from stocks. But I would be hesitant to rebalance $30,000. And I mean, how are you going to do that? You got 37,000, you got 30,000. What do you rebalance here exactly? I mean, to keep up to 60,000 in stocks, well, then you have no money in bonds. I don't think it's. That's why I just say be the Wellington. Just make it simple, man. Keep it simple, stupid. All right. Tracker annual spending, 100%. That's all that matters. The tracker annual spending, and he talks about. I guess that's pretty much it. So here's what I look at. I like Fritz's thing. If you want to get a little bit more detail, Fritz is 100% the way to go. Absolutely. I don't like that. For me, not me. And that's just because it's a deficiency on my part. Cash Wellington, cash Wellesley, cash S&P 500, and whatever your risk tolerance is. As I sit here today as a 51-year-old old guy, and I see myself at 60 retiring, I'll have cash and VTI. That's it, man, cash and VTI. I'm going to take the cash, and I'm going to take from the cash until VTI goes up. When the VTI goes up, I'll take from VTI. I'm not going to do any rebalancing. I'm just going to take from cash. If the market goes down like 2001 and 2, I'll take from cash. I'll let VTI just continue to roll. It'll be destroyed, but at some point, it's going to come back around. Now, when that some point comes, it probably won't even be back to where I started with if I retire into a 2000, 2001, 2002 scenario. Not a high probability. Again, we haven't had, how many years of 3 consecutive losses has the S&P 500 had? Let's go and look here. We're going to look at returns. And we had 1932, 2000, 2001, and 2. That's pretty much it. So the S&P 500, we have 1929 to 1932. Any years before that, for 3 straight years. No. Nope. And 1973, 1974, just 2 years. All right, so basically we've had, and again, what did not go down that much in 2001 and 2, by the way? Oh, yeah, your old buddy Wellington Fund. So let's take a look. Wellington Fund had 3 years in 1929 or 1930, 31, and 32, and it never had another 3-year return ever again, ever. The worst it had was 73, 74. That's it, man. And then in 2001 and 2 was up. 2002 is down 6.9. 2003 is down 22%. Tough to beat. And so the way I look at it, you got cash and you got Wellington. Literally that simple. And you say, okay, I'm going to spend my cash down and let the Wellington do its thing. The minute my cash is done, I'll spend from the Wellington for the rest of my life. Kitces did another article, too, along these lines about basically spending your fixed assets down and allowing the markets to continue to work its magic. And you're more of a, so essentially what would happen is a few years into retirement, you'd be very aggressive. But that way you avoided the sequence of return risk, if that makes sense. I can't find it. I'm not going to search for it, but a pretty good article, and I 100% agree with that. If you retire into 2009 and the markets go up, well, hell's bells. Pull for the market, man. Let your cash sit there idle. No problem with that either. But again, the likelihood of you retiring into a significant instance, a la 2008, 2001 and 2, and 1929 to 1932, not very high. And if it does, well, you're going to have to tighten your belt. I call it the tighten your belt retirement plan. You're just going to say, man, I'm not eating freaking fillets this month. I'm eating ramen noodles. I'm not going to get lobsters in Maine. I'm going to freaking eat, I don't know, whatever you want to do. I'll eat, I don't know, eggs from the local farmer, something like that. You see what I'm saying? So hope this helps. Again, I'll text Fritz that I did a video on his article and see if he wants to comment. Love to hear your thoughts. See ya.